I'm Anna.
I'm Ben.
We're AutoSave. Welcome to our channel.
Today we were watching Mushoku Tensei, Season 2, Episode 6. I am starting a new notebook. This was my old notebook, and
Throw
this
it
is
away.
my new notebook. No, it has important notes, and I'm probably going to need to reference it
Fair.
in this episode and many more. Last episode was great. We had a little battle, got to witness Rudy using Disturb Magic, which he learned in episode 21 of last season. We got to have some great interactions at the end of the episode in between Sylphie and Rudy, where Rudy blushes even and has probably a lot of feelings, even though that he doesn't know Sylphie is who Sylphie is. And we were told about Animus's teleporter labyrinth and exploring that, the book accounting those tales. I'm super excited to get into that. Man, I don't know what else to say. I'm just hyped. Mad hyped.
I think that's enough to say. Ooh, but let me do something before we start. Okay, so you've started a new notebook.
Yeah.
This is big. This is really big. I mean, that notebook, it has lasted you an entire season and then 5 episodes. So now you are transitioning into a smaller notebook. How does that make you feel? Like, do you feel restricted at all? Like, how many pages do you think that you're going to take up with this episode?
I feel like I have to write a little smaller, but I think that I'm more I don't know. I like this one's yellow.
Yes, I like that too. It like matches the show.
That's where my thoughts end.
Okay, just give me a quick guesstimate though. How many pages are you going to take up for this episode?
2.
2, okay.
Ready?
2.
Sweet. Calisthenics. It's important.
Going on a run?
学校生活は単調である。日課となっているトレーニングを始める。魔術の訓練を少々。
Oh, look at them.
ダノバが人形作りを教えてくれと売るリハビリも兼ねてのこと。あまりはかどっていない。
The inspiration isn't there.
朝と昼はザノバと一緒に食事を。
Good decision.
の日本料理にはようなものが出てくるので、エリナリーゼのあれの方は町の方でしっぽりやっているそうだ。
For her curse, right?
Yep.
活動するとは、他方には中魔術と進撃魔術。
So he's actually going and attending his classes even though he doesn't have to.
Yeah. Thought I understood.
多少聞き流して最初から聞くというのは勉強になる。授業がない時間は図書館で転移のことについてというもの自体が禁術として指定されているせいか。
It's taboo.
本作記が一番詳しく載っているかもし
れない。Our intro again. Oh, we missed the ending credit of last episode. We gotta watch it. Or not ending credit, the outro. The ED, right? Of course.
なかなかノリのいい人。
調べ物を進んでる？
どうでしょうね。その本、転移
の転移で行方不明になってね。
なんと言えばいいか。
最近になって
そうなんですか？
僕は探しには行けなかったわけだしね。それでそのものは相談なんだけど。
何でしょうか？
僕にも手伝わせてほしいんだ。たまに来るだけの相手に口出しされたりするのは。
よろしくお願いします。
よろしく。じゃあ早速だけど、転移の出現先のことが分かれば、
男相手に。いや、気の迷いだろ。
I love it. I love it.
Just let it happen, Rudy.
フィッツ先輩とは仲良くなってき、彼は謎が多い。
どうしてサングラスをつけているんですか？
サングラス、これのこと？だって言えないんだ。
寮の何階に住んでるんですか？
寮の方に寝泊まりしてるんだ。
That's not suspicious. Ah, there you go.
ピエール様のご迷惑になることはやらないよ。
寮では許可を取ればシェア奴隷と生活することが例外が許されているのは信頼されているのだろう。
先輩っては普通に話していますよね。無口な方って聞いてましたけど。
結構人見知りするんだ。
には自分から話しかけてきたように思ったが。
I also agree. It's suspicious.
Which path would you go over?
The little one with the water.
Oh, what a great shot.
There's so many little subtle
Right?
hints.
It's like how Rudy looks up to Roxy.
れは無理じゃないかな。
なぜこの笑顔を見ると高鳴るのだろうか。
Come on,
Follow
Rudy.
your
決し
heart.
てそういう趣味ではないはずな。
アリエル様に用事があるから。
よろしくお願いします。
謎の多い男フィッツ先輩。協力的なのもやっぱり謎だった。君の助言に従って動き、出会った彼と接する治療に関する手がかりがつかめるはずだ。
Man God is laughing right now.
師匠、世に人形の作り方
彼は変態である。行き過ぎたフィギュアオタクと
伝わってきます。伝わってきております。
を愛している。偏愛している。
So ashamed.
俺だって生前はフィギュアを使用したことがあるのだから。
授業を始めてくださらないのですか。
ザノバに対しもう少し待てと言い敵とはかけ離れていたのもあり、きっかけがつかめなかったのだ。
Until
That was past tense.
我が修行は厳しいぞ。
無論です。
奥義を伝授しよう。
はい。
療制作は始まったばかりだ。
come on, Zanoba. You got this. He's trying so hard.
がもっと優秀であれば。
よし、方法を変えよう。
そのやり方があるのですか。
魔力を使わない方向でいきましょう。
どうするのですか。
Nice.
現象的で最も確実な力のないものでも可能なはずだ。
師匠、これなら世にもできそうですか。
ああ、もう簡単に打ち砕かれた。バは手先が器用ではなかったのだ。
He just wants to create that which he
玉
loves.
押し、
His super strength got in the way. Maybe he needs to use like harder materials.
Yeah, yeah.
師匠のようにはできません。
It's
ということ
devastating.
が昨日ザノバと会っ
病を作るの？魔術で？
こんな感じです。
So cool.
それすごい。
Think about how precise you need to be, how much control you need to have.
これは普通の人には真似でき
譲り出すというものもありますが、
が不器用だからできないだね。参考にアスラのオートにも似たような人がいたよ。
Oh?
と能力も技能もないって人がね。
はどうしていたんですか？
その奴隷にやら
次の月休みに奴隷市場に行ってみますよ。
いい子が見つかるといいね。
どうしましたか？
そういえば僕も暇なんだよね。
I'll go with you.
そうなんですか。先輩も一緒に行きますか？
ならないかな。
いえいえ、食事でもおごりますよ。
そう。じゃあ
You think if Rudy knew it was Sylphie, he'd be like fucking this up? Like he'd be really awkward and like, you know?
ザノバ、今回の一件を提案、相応の敬意を払え。
した師匠。にかかります。シーロン王国大臣をお見知りおきを。
いや、王族の方がそんなやめてください。
顔合わせも済んだところで行きましょう。
Never in a million years I would have thought that these three would be traveling together. This is amazing.
初めてですので、まずは適当に見て回りましょう。
本当にみんな裸にな大きいな。
Do you think these are people that were teleported?
実に DT らしい反応だ。
ウス君はこういうの慣れてるんだね。
進めば多少は慣れるかと思いますよ。
っていうか、ルーデウス君ケーキ。
Say no.
族ですよね。
やっぱりドワーフですかね。
幼い子の方がいいと思うよ。
なぜですか？
小さい頃の方が覚えやすいんだ。
Huh.
5歳ぐらいから魔術を使い始めると、
Interesting.
総量が
総量は決まっていると聞いていますが、
教本にはそう書いてあるけど、面からするとそれは間違いだ。
やはりそう聞くと頃から魔術を使ってき
Yeah.
たのも多いのを名付け
I
る。
love that it's really not about being special.
Yeah.
たことですし、商人の方に聞いてみましょう。
It's about putting in that work earlier in life.
一人いたぞ。ドワーフ。6歳の健康状態はちょっと悪いな。
Not in the best health.
栄養喋れねえ。6歳じゃ当然だが文字も
Can't
読
speak
めね
human, can't read.
Can Rudy speak her language? He knows a lot of languages, so.
We saw somebody in a cage in the intro, right?
Mhm. We haven't gotten any inner monologue from Rudy about this.
え。おい、出ろ。
That's incantationless healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
あまりおすすめの商品とは
ルーデス君
水砲撃 BPS にルーデウスアシャディエフシュジアスオッケー
師匠どうしました
あり絶望してますね死にたいやつの顔です
そんなものを見たことがあると
何度もね
懐かしい目だ。俺もこんな目をしていた。現状を絶望し、
ヨーコをしてばい離職はボアエスナヨナジュニューピューいいよ
俺に彼女の人生を救ってやることは、ここで彼女を購入し、変えてやることはできる。それが救いではないことを、俺はよく知っているつもりだ。
It's not a quick
ない
fix.
ものを無理やりやらされても、して救いではない。むしろそれなら、終わらせてやった方がいい。
レクスマサークス
ボアシャデイボイボアシャジデイボイ
そんなもんだ。これでいい。生きたいじゃなくたくないで。とり
I
あえ
don't
ず
want to die is good enough for now.
Saving her.
ルーデス君この子の名前はなんて
エハスヨーヒディ
ネクサージュ
アスヨジアイエリ
デビュー SIS キャディ規制が入
バザルと美しき
は7歳になるまで正式な名
Until
前
they
をつけ
turn
ても
7. So we gotta give her
名
a
前が
name.
ないと不便ですね
つけてあげるしかないね可愛い名前にしてあげよう
君の意見を聞こう
ではジュリアスと
それ男の名前ですよね
かつて世が力加減を誤って殺しそうな弟の名前です
How sad.
What a way to bring that back into the
ジュリエット
story.
ぐらいにしときましょうよ
Juliet.
いい名前だね
よジュリエット
ジュリ
ジュリエット
ジュリ
Julie.
生活することになったジュリはザノバの世話をし、無影症魔術を習うことになった。俺とザノバの人形計画は前進していくこととなる。
All right. Oh, whoa.
Oh, and reaching for the book.
I love how light they're drawn. Oh.
Oh, look!
Okay, that was Mushoku Tensei, Season 2, Episode 6. I'm actually really glad that we messed up and forgot to watch the outro last episode and watched it this episode, because I feel like it means a lot more to me. Like, I feel like...
With the chairs.
With the chairs,
With the chairs,
exactly.
The library setting and them
Mhm.
sitting together in the chairs. Would that have almost felt like a spoiler
So
last episode?
How I was going to phrase that was, I'm glad that we didn't, because we would have seen Juliet already.
Yes.
And then we would have seen like, we wouldn't have understood the chairs.
I mean-
the chairs mean so much to me now.
Honestly, it's all hindsight speak, so
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
say that, oh, if we saw the two chairs in the library and saw them sitting in the library,
It's so
that
vague.
we'd then realize that Sylphie was probably going to study this with him, you know? But we do see them sitting together in this outro in the
Yeah.
library. So maybe we would have had some inkling and not been like...
But it's not like a spoiler in that sense, because it's not that big of like a narrative.
Right.
Like, we're not watching a character fighting another character
Mhm.
that we haven't seen yet, right? It's something more sentimental. And I think that seeing this outro specifically made me more curious and more... I care a little bit. I would like to put more attention into what I think that Sylphie's feeling in this arc, in this episode.
That's very fair to come off of this outro, this ending song, but also how the beginning of the opening starts. It really is like framing this picture as like, think about Sylphie's POV.
Yeah.
Think about how, and didn't we start this season off with where Sylphie was at? Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we started right with like her falling from the sky.
I'm just so... I'm really trying to think about where she is mentally in her position, because like the things are... There are a lot of very obvious things, right? Like, oh, you're not telling Rudy like that who you are. You're interacting with him so much, but like trying to think about the why of that and what's going through her head. I'm wanting to like take more time and like care into what she's going through, because I'm sure to some degree she's like, well, throughout this episode, she's realizing and learning about all the things that Rudy has been involved in, and all the horrors potentially that he's seen, and like all the tragedies that he's seen. And I wonder if like she feels like she doesn't have like a right to just insert herself really into fair. His life like that.
I like where you're going with that train of thought, that when she brings up at the beginning that she had a friend who was, moved in the teleportation incident, and that she didn't get a chance to go look for them. When we think about her falling from the sky and where she ended up, she lucked out immensely with ending up in Ariel's lap, basically. She was in relative like safety, luxury, and comfort during that whole time. And especially at the end of the episode, when she kind of hears about the look in the eyes, and that like Rudy understands that look or has seen it before, you get kind of like a little like movement from both her and Zenoba. And I think that maybe she is realizing like, this person that looks exactly how I would picture they would look, they act exactly how they used to act toward me, but there's so many years of difference. There's some like the deep inside of him is something I don't know. Like I don't know what's there. I don't know everything he's been through.
And like Sylphie has such admiration for Rudy, and looks at him as like, like a teacher of sorts, right? In terms of magic. And then seeing all that he's been through, and seeing where he is right now, like in mentality, and what his goal is, like it's very clear that he is looking for Sylphie to Fitz, right? Like Fitz is like acknowledging that. But I hope that, I don't know, I hope that Sylphie might wonder at some point narratively, like in the show that we can see, that it might be torturous to Rudy to not let him in. Because if Rudy does come forward with his feelings about this, like, it's hard on him for not being able to find his mom, and it's defeating that he's not able to find Sylphie, right? Like if she hears this, then would it not be like, wouldn't she feel that it could potentially be wrong of her to not just come forward with that and save Rudy the pain?
So we have like a couple elements that I can like think of like in other media, whether it's that person is dressed as it's a woman disguised as a man, and then the other male character like in Shakespeare is kind of like, oh, I'm kind of falling for this person. Or Mulan even. And then there's also this idea of like being disguised and disguising who you are, and is that cruel to like have conversations with someone where you know who they are, but you're disguising your identity from them, and you're almost like, are you taking advantage of the conversation in that way? Are you being cruel to them by they're naive to this, aren't aware of this, and you kind of have somewhat of a, at least for information and intelligence, an upper hand on them on like the intricacies of what this conversation is and what it means. And I don't think Rudy would necessarily be upset, at least at this point, to learn that it's Sylphie. And I still kind of feel that Sylphie is planting, she's not lying. Definitely, she's not covering her tracks and making up stories. I mean, she's putting subtle things out there, and he's just not reading into them, because why would he think that he needed to?
Well, she's denying him information very bluntly, right? And I think that is a lie in its own right, because like it's one thing if you're giving everybody
live admission, is that what it's called?
I think that it's one thing if you're giving if you're being very transparent and this person isn't putting two and two together. But when you're asking about like, oh, what's the reason for wearing sunglasses, which is a really interesting point, because sunglasses, apparently that term does not exist in this world, and I love that. But Sylphie not elaborating on that is a step in the direction of like maintaining that identity, right?
But what's the percentage there? Is Sylphie holding on to this identity around Rudy for majority percentage Ariel's sake and the job that Sylphie has now, or more that Sylphie isn't really ready to be like taking it off and
Okay.
hi,
All right.
I'm
So
Sophie.
let's break
Rudy.
it down, right? We assume that the only reason Rudy was invited here was because of the letter drafted by Ariel and Sylphie at the end of last season, correct? That's the assumption we're going with currently. If that's the case, then Ariel is at least privy to Sylphie having a relationship with this person. We haven't seen explicit dialogue since Rudy and Sylphie have met up again between Sylphie and Ariel about if Sylphie's being extremely transparent, like, yes, this is the person I've been looking for so long, and like they're here right now. Oh, I'm keeping up like a secret identity. Like, I don't think that if Sylphie told Rudy who she actually was in like a one-on-one conversation in secret, what would that do ill effect to Ariel? I don't think anything.
Okay, in honesty of like how he would probably react at this moment, it could possibly have an ill effect if Rudy starts treating Sylphie like a girl.
Yeah.
If Rudy has, like, obviously, I think we kind of said it, or you maybe said it, I think you said it during the episode, like, that maybe Rudy wouldn't actually be ready for a reunion right now. How he would actually handle a reunion right now with Sylphie. How would that actually go? Would he be awkward and uncomfortable? He wouldn't be able, how would that actually go? How would he feel about this, and how would he act towards Sylphie? And because of that, like, reservation that I feel about how he would respond to Sylphie right now, I think that there's a chance that maybe in his reactions, in his reactionary actions, it could then get out that Sylphie was a girl, and obviously they chose to make Sylphie silent fits for a reason.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm sure that, like, in Rudy's own right? So from Sylphie's perspective, like, she's seeing the kind of person Rudy would be to a complete stranger. What kind of person he's become. And we've seen a lot of growth from Rudy, but in a very similar vein, Sylphie has had a lot of growth herself. And Rudy wouldn't leave the life behind that he has made over since the teleportation incident has happened. And just like Rudy wouldn't, I don't think Sylphie would. Sylphie cares about Ariel and about her affiliation to her and like what...
in caring for her, protecting her.
Yeah, and takes that seriously. So I'm sure to a certain extent she wouldn't want to jeopardize that or put that at risk. But there has to come a time, I feel like, where she's going to wonder if what she's doing is wrong. And if she brings it up to Rudy, I wonder if Rudy would say anything about it. Like, why wouldn't you tell me? I feel like that conversation would have to come.
I think it's interesting that you'd also brought up earlier the fact that we haven't seen Ariel and Sylphie talk about this. So we're not seeing like the princess tell, one of her servants, one of her protectors what to do.
Yeah.
And we do know that Ariel is giving Sylphie enough like leeway to be able to go to the library whenever she wants, go into town with Zenoba and Rudy. And it's not like she's sneaking away from Ariel. That would be really surprising to me for her to do something like that.
Yeah. It seems like Ariel would give her all the space she needs, which adds to that.
Totally respectful.
Yeah, which adds to that perception that I have of like, oh, she's not doing this for Ariel. Like that, like I can be totally off base there, but it just adds evidence to that, that I think she's doing it more for like either she thinks she's doing it for Rudy or she's doing it for herself.
I think that I'm at the moment leaning in that direction. I think that the percentage is probably like you've said, like she has already decided her path. When Ariel was like, you don't need to continue to protect me, Sylphie's like, I want to. I'm going to do it because I want to. So Sylphie already decided the path that she wants for herself, and they're not necessarily going to mesh. I think she's probably aware that Rudy's here for a little while to study and figure out, that's why Sylphie wants to be involved in this research, is because I believe Sylphie's aware that this research is the reason that Rudy came. Therefore, when it's over, he will leave.
Yeah.
And that's why she wants to be a part of the researching of the incident.
But it's so interesting because they, if we are right in assuming that the reason he was invited here was because of that, like, you know, Sylphie Ariel interaction, there was purpose behind that invitation, right? Like, will that come up? Will that be brought up? Is Ariel inevitably going to ask something of Rudy? You know?
At the moment, it just feels like Ariel's trying to, as the student body president, bring as many powerful and possibly future influential young people into this mix to know her, to meet her in real life and get an actual feeling for who she is. Therefore, in the future, they might stand by her side or say, like, I went to school with her and she's a great person in her yearbook, you know, like writing at the back of the yearbook. So I feel like maybe that's like the immediate reason. I'm not like expecting like, okay, students, we're gonna all go to war now.
Yeah. There are so many like little interesting things this episode. Like at the beginning, when Rudy was in class and we were being taught barrier magic, we learned a bit about like a bit of lore around barrier magic, and I wanted to go over it. Barrier magic is used throughout the world today, but until recently, the holy country of Milis concealed these spells, so we were unable to offer lessons in them here. And Rudy's saying that Roxy taught him about barriers a long time ago, and he thought that he understood them, but they're going over those beginning lessons again because he missed some stuff.
And he was a very young kid when he learned these things.
Yeah.
So that also would fit. I don't think you retain literally... He literally was taught magic.
Yeah.
I imagine that's a lot of information for a child to like hold and keep in their head at all times.
We're also told that they're still forbidden to teach beyond the beginner level, the basics. But I think that it's super interesting that like Rudy isn't... we got reinforcement of this later, which I think both of us loved, but Rudy isn't as strong as he is and as capable as he is because he was born strong. He has like put in the work and is doing it right now, right? You're going over the beginning steps of things and to solidify your foundation that you've already built. You're going back and filling in cracks. That's so much dedication and care.
I'm so happy about this, especially with him being aware and identifying in himself that he's plateaued in his magic.
Yeah.
To have the like, to not be filled with so much pride and ego that you wouldn't go back to the basics. Like he is putting himself in a basic magic class.
Yeah.
And he's not letting his like pride get to him about how talented he actually is.
It's not even in question,
Yeah.
right? And I love that because you could easily write a character who's like, I don't need to do that.
Yeah, I don't need to do that. Like I already beat their strongest magician, their strongest magic user in Sylphie when I got here.
He's crushing red dragons, and he's like, nah, I got to go back to the basics, make sure I understood everything correctly, and I love that. We were told
have to have
that
a solid foundation,
right? We were told that all teleportation is apparently taboo. That's really interesting.
I mean, I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that the people that decided it was taboo realized human nature and that there are a lot of bad people out there and will do bad things to people.
Yeah.
And we've already seen that and seen examples of that. And in this episode, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about was that we get mention of something being taboo, but then we get something that's also bad, but we don't get any dialogue about it being bad.
Yeah.
We don't get any inner monologue. It's so interesting, but we're also getting this idea of like the taboo of the teleportation. So if you read into it, it's like it kind of fits. They connect a little bit because we know that through the teleportation, people were displaced everywhere, therefore could be so easily taken advantage of.
People became slaves because of that.
People became slaves because of it. And I liked that choice that we talk and we have dialogue about the teleportation being taboo, but then when we see a consequence, a action that happens after the teleportation later on in the episode, there's no dialogue around it.
Okay, so when they say all teleportation is apparently taboo, are they saying that like any talk about the incident is taboo or the specific like action of teleportation, right?
That's a good question.
Because I think that those are two different things.
Yeah, those are two different things.
Like it's one, like if you were saying that it's specific towards the disaster that caused this like mass teleportation, then it would be an interesting like view of, okay, that's taboo, but you can like bask in the repercussions of that, you know, in terms of like slavery and stuff. But it kind of sounds like they're making it more broad, like all teleportation is apparently taboo.
I mean, it could be one of those things where once one iteration of it is proven to have bad effects, then you cancel the whole thing. You say it's all taboo.
Yeah.
Because it's like, once you learn teleportation magic and once you start using it, how could it, of course, if you then get better at it, it's not just beginner spells. The top level spell of it would probably be a mass teleportation. So you just don't want people like starting to walk down that path of like feeling the freedom to use that sort of like so life-altering ability to literally move someone's
we should
body
talk about that.
To another location. Because
like the pinnacle of like abilities we've really seen are like Orsted, Nanahoshi was there, but then Roxy, right? I mean, we've never seen somebody have the ability like to use magic to create that to teleport themselves, right? Or use that aspect of teleportation. And if we think that that is something that could be learned, then the highest degree of that would be something like a mass teleportation, right?
And we'd think that whoever is the person or magic user that made the mass teleportation happen would probably not be, by society's terms, a good guy.
He'd probably be like on the run, you know? People would probably be like after him, you'd think.
Well, yeah, they would want to figure out who did it, because that person would probably, they'd want to lock them up. But if they can teleport, then they can just like leave their jail cell.
Yeah, I guess like I've been so desensitized to the idea of teleportation through like comics and like superheroes and like abilities that like I never thought about it through the lens of magic, because in terms of magic, like, okay, you can create fire, you can do something as crazy to think of as build a sculpture that's super precise in your hand. But the ability of teleportation in terms of magic is so nuts to think about.
I feel like it helps me a little bit to understand it. When I think about shows and movies that handle things like time machines or portals or something of that kind of idea of being able to move a person's body from one point to another, whether location or point in time, there's always that beginning conversation about it being easier to move something smaller first than something bigger. I
would imagine that it would be extremely hard, if not impossible, for Rudy to learn teleportation. I like when I'm thinking of how capable and like strong Rudy is, most of his abilities seem to be based in the reality that he lived previously. Most of them seem to like come from like an understanding of how this thing would work or would be created, how a figure would take shape, right?
Because he obviously looked at them a lot.
Yeah, so like like in your previous life, sure, you have an understanding of like sci-fi teleportation, but there wouldn't really be many like cases to take note of that like have like the specific like process of how to teleport.
Up like how he's retaining like almost like a muscle memory.
Yeah. It's interesting. I also loved at the end of the intro, we got a scene of Rudy on a carriage looking at the school, and we get a little appearance of Caravaggio right there in front of it. You know,
totally Caravaggio.
Why else would it be there? Loved it. Zenoba is the craziest character in this show. We brought up in such a nonchalant way just the idea, once again, that his super strength was the cause of his brother's death.
Okay, one of my favorite things is like when nonchalantly people bring up information, like information drops. Like, it's so much better sometimes than just like this big building up moment of like, I'm about to get some information. And it's so precisely placed in there in the dialogue. And it feels like you unlocked a chest, like you were in a dungeon, you found a chest, and you found the key and you unlocked it, and it starts to open and the music's like da-na-na. And then you get the information. That's great. But I love it when it just falls into my lap like bird poop on a head.
That's an analogy. But no, I agree, because like a lot of times when there's that huge buildup, then there's that like expectation with the buildup. But when it's something that's like, we're reiterating something we've already learned, but the way that it was brought up in that conversation was so like this has been on his... Zenoba lives with this every day. Can you imagine how tragic that was?
And he wants to name her after this.
It's
this
his first
brother.
thought.
It's his first thought of a name, and then it really just opens up this like, oh my god, what is Zenoba's like heart actually like? Like I'm like, I need to give this dude a little more like attention and like.
Amazing. We had a really good scene of Rudy and Sylphie walking over riverbed, and it first of all, I don't know who designed this.
Who was the architect behind this decision?
Like to have a bridge and then steps, but I love them. And it might not be practical, and it might be practical, who knows? But I love the idea. Just it's a little more fun, you know? You can play like hopscotch instead of just walking the easy way.
I feel like the architect, he or she decided that this was a test, that there are two types of people. And here we have Sylphie, a character that is fallen into being a servant of the princess. Her path is very straightforward, and there's no cracks in it. She is well protected because of her position, but she's also the protector, and she's decided on this path. It's rock solid, like this bridge is. And then Rudy's has some water slipping through. There's some cracks. There's some hopping going on. It's a little fun. It's a little spontaneous.
See, I think romance. I think that the person who designed this had romance in mind.
Like,
they're thinking about when the sun is setting. They're thinking about how picturesque this moment could be, you know?
If they were walking beside each other?
Yeah.
So that when you went romance, I thought you were going to say that her love for him has been solid and just been a continuous line.
No.
And that his love has skipped around to different women. I thought that's where you were going when you said romance. And I was like, you're right. You're so smart. You didn't even say it.
I really appreciated, going back to Zenoba a little bit, that like the next attempt at trying to make these figures was like the physical end of it, right? Trying to use clay and other materials to try to carve it out. And for a second, I really thought it was going to work before I remembered about the super strength.
That honestly, they did that for us just to remind us about the super strength.
And I really, really enjoyed that Sylphie is like very confident in her perception of how incantationless magic and learning magic from a younger age would increase that mana output. Because from what I can understand, the only two things that she has to go off of that are Rudy and herself, right? And she's very reaffirming to Rudy, who is only like in his mind, he has the same kind of like material to base that opinion off of, but she's very confident with that, and that leads Rudy to believe like, okay, that is a great point. That reaffirms it. I
feel like Cliff could also possibly fit in that. I mean, when we got his episode Goblin Slayer, we see little depictions of this small child being brought up in what we would assume would be a church. Point. And using magic and awing people, that he's almost put on this pedestal because he's so strong as a child. So he would fit in that same camp. Yeah.
I wanted to try to find the actual language used in terms of learning younger. Was it when they were at the market already?
Maybe. And that they were looking for a 5-year-old and...
Yeah, here we go. Okay. So I wanted to bring this up because there are a lot of TV shows or anime that like retcon information, and that's fine. That's great. This is the exact opposite side of that coin, and it's like you are giving us information that is the world's information, but just because that information is given, like the rest of the world believes that information, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's exactly true, right? Because it can just be people's best understanding of the circumstance and not really figuring out things yet. So most people seem to believe that mana capacity is determined at birth, and then that's what the textbooks say. But my master's case and mine prove them wrong. Like, I love the idea of like new like new information being uncovered in this world. They're being uncovered by characters that we've watched since birth.
I really love that from the beginning of this show, we've slowly dismantled, maybe not even slowly Jenga tower dismantled the idea that Rudy is special.
Yeah.
Someone else can use incantationless magic. Someone else can have great mana capacity.
Yeah.
It's really awesome to like, because I think it's the writer knowing that the viewer is going to possibly have that expectation of the protagonist and main character, that they are going to be special to some degree or able to surpass the limits that would bind other people.
Yeah.
And I really like that we're like slowly dismantling that, and not at a rate where it feels like so sudden, like, oh, no, but he's not actually special. It's more like, oh, this thing that we thought was a little bit genius of him isn't maybe necessarily genius. It more just shows like dedication to learning at a young age. Like they always say, like kids can learn languages, like teach kids languages when they're young, because when you get older it becomes like much harder to retain that and learn a language.
I love that as they're like slowly dismantling that, they're reinforcing the idea of like hard work and what that can do. Like it means so much more to me, like subjectively as a viewer, that this character wasn't just born with all this stuff, right? Like I remembered the episode that he was first being like, oh, I must be born with like this amount of mana, right? Like I love the idea that he's gotten here in this life and made so many connections and become so strong because of how much attention and time he's putting into it. He's getting up in the mornings and like training every day. I was about
to say that, like his hard work, it expands past just him getting better at magic. He puts hard work into, you know, his figure art. Like he's not feeling like, at least at the beginning of the episode, he wasn't feeling like it was good enough to be able to accept the title of like teacher to Sonoba.
Yeah.
And we also get like emotions and feelings and friendships that he is putting work into and trying to be healthy with throughout this story. And then physically, you know, working out, running in the morning, working on his sword training, even though he doesn't use a sword. Like he is instilling a lot of these really good practices that show, and he's getting up so early. Like there's not a laziness about that. Like getting up early is hard.
I wonder if we're ever going to see like Rudy's sword like work come into play. Like obviously he's not like a swordsman first or anything, but it's great that he keeps up with it, and I'm happy that he does.
I feel like that could be a leg up when he's interacting with these other magic users. Let's just use Cliff and Sylphie as our examples. It's not like they are also a wielder of a sword.
Yeah.
So in a way, if he's going up against them and he's in a battle with a magic user that is formidable against him, he might end up having to be a little crafty with using something like a physical object, the sword.
Yeah.
To get like close quarters with the magic user.
Yeah.
While they're casting or something.
It could give them that leg up, that advantage where the other person would just only rely on magic and like distance fighting.
Or they'd want to keep a distance.
Yeah. When we were walking into the room to like meet Juliet, there was a point in the episode where like Rudy kind of breaks eye line forward and like looks to his left and like is looking at the other people who are slaves and are, you know, in chains. And there's one person specifically in focus. It's a girl with like dark black hair and maybe green eyes. I don't know. But I think it's interesting that we got that, because on like the first seeing it, I'm like Rudy's I'm thinking that Rudy's acknowledging like, okay, these are probably just people from, you know, the teleportation disaster, just people who are enslaved right now and dealing with the feelings that, you know, obviously you would feel walking in a room like that. But then I was like, okay, we're given a very specific, clear face of a person. The person in the background doesn't have any details or characteristics drawn. Who is this person going to be going forward, if at all, anybody or anything, you know? Like, my first instinct was like, okay, is it, what's her name?
Well, I don't know who you're referencing.
I just said it earlier, that Nana Hoshi. But Nanahoshi, all we got from Nanahoshi was that she had long hair, black hair, and a mask.
See, my headcanon for Nanahoshi is she's the student that didn't show up to homeroom.
Agreed. That we talked about that as well. But because I have Nanahoshi on the brain already, that like I'm like, who is this? Because obviously attention was drawn to her, right?
I wonder if that's more to point humanize to the viewer about what Rudy's seeing here. Is he's seeing like a real person in front of him? Like there's an awareness.
Look at his expression, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I think that might just be for us, since we're not getting inner monologue from Rudy. I think that in that moment we're seeing that he, clear as day, is seeing the look on these people's faces and the situation that they're in, and that they are human and real. And this whole scene or idea of going here for Sonoba to get a slave, the dialogue and when they're having it at all is, I'm like really impressed with it. It creates this like this whole other mood and tone that I was like, what is this choice that they're making here to not have the characters call out what they're seeing, at least internally, or admonish it, and just have them like just be going into this room, and the viewer, like, I was like so immersed in it, like, because I was so caught off guard. I think I would have been used to inner dialogue or something in a scene like this.
I understand that they're in in a world that's bigger than they are, right? And in a city that's bigger than they are, and they are abiding by those rules. But God, I wanted to see like Rudy blow up this place and like let everybody out, you know? And obviously like that's the intention there. But
it's really purposeful, I think, also, that the slave that they pick is not someone who was what I mean, I could have missed the dialogue and misinterpreted it, but I'm pretty sure they had said that she wasn't there because of the teleportation. I think she was sold by her family, or her family, something about her mom. It went pretty quick, and I was a little bit like, what's happening here? Whole family went into slavery to cover the parents' debts. Yeah. So I think that's very purposeful, that this isn't even... It's showing us that this was a reality before the teleportation incident even happened. Yeah. It's not like that just magically made slaves a thing. Yeah. That this was already something that was like in the world. I wonder what kind of character Juliet's gonna become to us. Like, is it going to be somebody that is just going to be with Sonoba forever, or are we going to have any like future, I don't know, arcs with her? And also, what does this do for Zenoba's character? I think that's also like really interesting. We're giving Zenoba a child that is now living with Zenoba. Zenoba's a prince, and I believe that we already know from Ginger York that the slaves and servants that worked under Zenoba liked him. They were probably scared of him, but I think they also had a respect for him. I mean, my like headcanon, because I like Zenoba, is that he knows how delicate human life can be after he crushed his brother in his bare hands. So he's going to be very protective, and I love that idea. Like, if anybody fucks with Juliet, I would love to see them I would love to see them trying to fuck with Juliet, and then behind this person, this massive silhouette overtakes the screen. It's just a bowl cut, and then he just rips his, like, whoever this fucker's head off is. I have the whole scene written in my head. Think about that choice. Like, you are choosing to name someone that you are saying is your slave. The name of a family member that you wish you could have actually protected and not murdered. Yeah. Interesting. That you're almost giving to her a name that means that you think of her as family, and that you will be thinking of her as family. And it's possible. I would be really interested how much of a dynamic or relationship they're going to give us with that character. Yeah, I agree. Do you have any favorite moments in this episode? That's a good question. I think that Sylphie and Rudy walking over the body of water, I think that was really good. It's a big moment. Just because it was just visually really intriguing also. Speaking of visually intriguing, Sylphie was really visually intrigued by this guy in front of her. And about how things could get that big. You know?
That was interesting.
And that brought up where I was like, Rudy, don't say anything. When he was like, that's a virgin over there.
Mhm.
And she was like, what? Does that mean you're experienced? I was like, let's not have this
That
conversation
right now.
Please don't tell Sylphie this right now. I can't handle that.
Yeah. All right. That's all I have you.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we hope to see you next time.